Hello, fellow members of the Midnight Society. Welcome to a special episode where I will be ranking the storytellers from seasons 1 through 5 of Are You Afraid of the Dark from worst to best. Submitted for the approval of the Midnight Society, I call this the Tale of the Notable Narrator. The storytellers from the first 5 seasons of the show were Gary, David, Kristen, Betty Ann, Kiki, Frank, Eric, Sam, Tucker, and Stig. Okay, no problem. If we just run the numbers, Stig is the only one with a 100% hit rate, so thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like and yada yada yada. I'm gonna go get a coffee. You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go. Oh, fine. I'll do a full breakdown. It was all comfy. And if you're asking yourself, why are you in a bathrobe in the middle of the woods? The answer is, shut up. If this were strictly down to the episodes I liked versus the ones I didn't from each storyteller, then yes, Stig would win. But I'm not relying on just math. This is a popularity contest after all, and I'll be taking the storytellers' personalities into account. To end things on a high, I will be going from who I consider the worst storyteller to who I consider the best storyteller. Now, these are only my opinions, and if you feel differently about these rankings, I'd love to hear your rankings in the comments below. I did polls on Reddit, YouTube, Patreon, and Facebook for the best and worst storytellers, and I'll be sharing those results near the end of the video. Alright, let's begin with the boring stuff, the stats. Just rating the storytellers based on the tales I approved or unapproved of shakes out as follows. Coming in at the bottom would be a tie between Kristen and David, who told 5 tales total. Of those tales, I only approved on 2. For Kristen, it was the tale of Locker 22 and the tale of the Frozen Ghost, and even then I wouldn't consider those great episodes.
Go ahead. Do your worst.
For David, the 2 episodes I approved of were the tale of the shiny red bicycle and the tale of the hatching. Sadly, neither Kristen or David were able to give us any more tales because they were murdered by Gary. Moved away. Don't worry, Gare Bear, your secret's safe with me. Except that I've told everyone on the internet repeatedly. Let's move on.
How sweet.
Next up is Gary's first victim, Eric, who told 2 stories. I gave my approval on one of them, and that was the Tale of the Dark Music, an okay episode with a sinister twist ending that really made me hopeful for what Eric might do in the future. It just breaks your heart when they die so young.
In the arms of the angel.
Slightly ahead of Eric would be Tucker, who told 7 tales, and I approved 4 of them. The Tale of the Midnight Ride, the Tale of the Guardian's Curse, the Tale of the Water Demons, and the Tale of the Fire Ghost. Now, this is where I need to address why I can't rely just on the math. Some of the tales I approved, I barely approved, meaning I didn't love them, and sometimes tales I unapproved of, I didn't hate. This makes the statistical data murky at best. An example of this was the Tale of the Midnight Ride. I didn't particularly like the story, and only really approved it because I love Washington Irving's original story that Tucker stole it from.
Yes!
The next person on the list will probably surprise a lot of people, and that is Betty Ann, who told a whopping 12 tales. Of those 12, I didn't care for 5 of them. The Tale of the Nightly Neighbors, the Tale of the Dollmaker, the Tale of the Curious Camera, the Tale of the Silent Servant, and the fan-favorite episode, the Tale of the Ghastly Grinner. This is another thing that makes just relying on the math a problem. The more tales someone tells, the more chances they have to tell one that isn't a hit. Is it fair that she's just ahead of Tucker when she told almost twice as many stories? I only liked 4 of his where I liked 7 of hers. No, it's not fair, which is why math sucks and I'm not using it for my final decisions.
Logical.
Just ahead of Betty Ann is the ringleader, Gary, who told 10 tales, and, while he started off strong with a 6 approved tale streak, he then finished off with a 4-tale losing streak, featuring the Tale of the Renegade Virus, the Tale of the Unfinished Painting, the Tale of a Door Unlocked, and the Tale of Badge. 7% ahead of Gary is Frank, who told 6 tales, and of those 6, I liked 4 of them. The Tale of the Midnight Madness, the Tale of the Dangerous Soup, the Tale of Cutter's Treasure, and the Tale of Train Magic. Though, Those last two, I barely gave a pass.
Hey, watch it, man.
We are at the top 3 for the maths. Kiki is next and told 10 tales. I approved 7 of them, with only Captured Souls, Vacant Lot, and Jagged Sign being on my unapproved list. Sam comes in ahead of that, having told 6 tales, with only the tale of C7 being unapproved by me. That puts Stig at the top, telling 2 tales, and both were approved, giving him a 100% hit rate. Now, that being said, do I consider him the best storyteller?
Not remotely.
Okay, let's get serious. Time to rate these fictitious kids for real. While I will be considering their success rates, I'm also going to be factoring in their personalities, theatricality, and any other arbitrary things I choose to. Now look, I know that as kids, we all had our storyteller crushes. Mine was Betty Ann, and I know that Gary, Kristen, Sam, and Frank were also popular in that regard. I mean, how could they not be? Did you see the slutty little outfits Frank would wear? Anyway, I'll be trying to not let that bias my choices. My worst storyteller from seasons 1 through 5 is Eric. Surprise, surprise. While technically speaking, he had a 50% success rate, he was a douchebag. All right, he never felt like he wanted to be there, and when he was there, he was always so dismissive of the others. I mean, this is the guy who showed up with only part of a story to tell. Who does that? I mean, how did he ever get invited to be a part of the group to begin with? I'm glad he's dead, I really am. Only slightly ahead of Eric is Eric 2.0, aka Tucker. Now, I will say this spot was a toss-up between Tucker and Kristen, but there's a reason Kristen finishes ahead of Tucker, and I'll get to that shortly. I would say that Tucker was even more of a twat than Eric was, but got away with more because he was Gary's brother. Remember, Gary's parents told Gary that he couldn't come anymore if Tucker couldn't go with him, so it didn't matter what story Tucker told at his initiation, he was getting in. Now, Tucker could have told a really unique and interesting tale to let everyone know he deserved to be there, but instead, he chose to rip off The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. I would like to give him props for him using props like the cell phone to tell the tale of the phone police, but I actually think that's a really stupid way to tell a story, and I hated the tale.
No fair! I was distracted!
Based on my reviews, it may surprise a lot of you that Kristen is not at the absolute bottom of my list, but here's why. Even though I didn't like most of her tales, Kristen was always committed to the theatricality of telling the story. She went out of her way to bring ambiance to the campfire to really set the scene for, what would usually be a lackluster story. I also felt like some of the others were constantly giving her a hard time just because she was pretty. I don't know if it was intentional on the showrunner's part, but it really felt like she was being pretty shamed a lot.
Guess we finally found something wrong with Miss Perfect.
On the opposite side of that coin, we go from someone who took care of their appearance to someone who wrang out their sweaty socks by the campfire and then gave one of them to Gary to wipe his hands with. Yeah, I'm talking about Stig. He only told 2 stories, and while both of those stories were awesome, I hated Stig. From the moment he popped out of his sack and laid his greasy lips on Kiki's face, I already wanted to deck him, okay? Now, my biggest issue with Stig is that he feels like he was supposed to be Frank's replacement in that he's rebellious. The difference is, Frank felt genuine, a guy with a serious chip on his shoulder, but he also has this creative side that the Midnight Society allowed him to display, whereas Stig felt like a rebel without a clue. Like, he was just an ass to be an ass, and it certainly didn't help that he was friends with Tucker. I mean, the only reason he's higher on the list than Tucker is because he actually told good stories.
Cool.
Next up is David, who told 2 of my least favorite tales, but also told one of my favorite tales of the series, the tale of the shiny red bicycle. David is the character that I would probably most identify with at that age, watching the show. While I could have the showmanship of Gary in the right setting, I most often had the shy and reserved demeanor of David. And I think that may have actually hurt him in my eyes. After all, in the realm of escapism, you like the characters you want to be, not the ones you already are. Regardless of where he falls on my list, he will always have my admiration for being bold enough to court Kristen, even if it got both of them killed by Gary in the end. I just offended Frank not that long ago, but he doesn't come in that far ahead of Stig. In fact, I actually like David more than Frank, but I liked more of Frank's stories. He also gave us Dr. Vink, and everybody loves that nutbag.
I am not a nutbag.
I actually really liked Frank in the first season because he was always antagonistic to Eric, and I mean, you know how I felt about Eric. When Sam and Tucker joined up, Frank would still keep me on his side when he would, threaten to kill Tucker, but his goonish advances on Sam always put me off. The interesting thing was that he started to have a shift in his character near the end of his final season. I mean, maybe he was changing, or maybe he was putting up a front to try to impress Sam. Unfortunately, we'll never know because he also became one of Scary Gary's victims.
Who said that?
Now we are in the upper echelon of storytellers, starting with Kiki. Statistically, Kiki should take my number 3 spot, but she's coming in 4th. While I liked the sass that Kiki brought to the table, sometimes she just went too far. I never liked how mean she was to Kristen. It felt uncalled for. Like, I get that Kiki was a tomboy and Kristen was very girly, but there was no reason to be mean about it.
Yeah, after the work is all done, she wouldn't want to break her fingernails.
While Kiki had a good track record, she wasn't terribly theatrical in her presentations, although she did enjoy her props from time to time. In the number 3 spot is the man who has no doubt caused countless forest fires due to his lack of care extinguishing flames at each meeting, Gary. While Kiki had one more tale that I approved of than Gary, this serial killer with a kind face was the guy I wanted to be. I mean, I didn't want to be a serial killer. Well, I have never tried murder, so I don't know if I'd be into it or not. But I did love magic, and I used to put on magic shows when I was a kid, though I was never as good as Gary. I mean, he could make entire people disappear. Permanently.
David can't make it tonight. He's sick.
Aside from being super likable and having a fairly decent tale track record, he also gave us Sardo. If you were to ask fans of the show who their favorite recurring character is, I think it would strike up a heated debate between Sardo and Dr. Vink, but for me, Sardo is the winner. I love his sleazy incompetence, and he was always a welcome treat, even in Gary's tales that I didn't care for.
Have you seen our vomit?
The number 2 spot was very difficult for me to settle on. It honestly could have gone either way. One storyteller has a much better track record, but the other one crushes the theatricality and setting the scene for each tale they tell. In the end, I did let 12-year-old me's bias win the day. In second place is Sam. Sam is awesome. She's kind, assertive, and out of 6 tales she only had 1 that I didn't care for, though admittedly there were 2 that I didn't love. The thing about Sam's stories is that they were just good stories, though typically light on scares if they had them at all, but she told one of my favorite tales across all 5 seasons in The Tale of the Dream Girl.
Ooh, pressure's on.
I guess that means my top spot is no surprise to anyone. To me, the best storyteller from seasons 1 through 5 of Are You Afraid of the Dark is Betty Ann. Betty Ann had the most at-bats with 12 tales, and even though I only approved just over half of them, she always brought something unique to the table when telling her stories. The other thing I really appreciated too was her versatility. A lot of the others would stay in their lanes for their stories. Gary always featured magic, Sam always had a romance plot, Kiki loved ghost stories, and, while they would all occasionally dabble in other genres, Betty Ann was all over the place in the best possible way. Evil clowns, aliens, magic, haunted houses, sinister cameras, and lizard doppelgangers. While I didn't always love the end result, I always appreciated the variety.
That's okay. That's okay, I understand.
Aside from being a great storyteller, Betty Ann just seemed like a super cool person. She was always kind and seemed to get along with everyone. I mean, she also had a delightfully wicked streak when it came to the subject of horror.
Where'd you get that? That's a whole nother story.
So those were my storyteller rankings for seasons 1 through 5, but now I'll bet you all want to know what you thought. Not until you say it.
Do it!
Okay. God, I didn't know Shia was working for you all now. Man. Look, I'm not going to go through every storyteller, but I am going to list the top 2 and bottom 2 storytellers based on the polls that I ran. Let's start at the bottom again.
What are you waiting for? Do it!
Let me tell you, nothing divides a fan base like asking them to pick their favorite and least favorites of anything. This was no different, though there did seem to be a definitive pick for worst, and that was Kristen, with Joel Rudd saying, "Sorry Kristen, it ain't even close. Your stories were never scary." However, I will say that a number of people had Kristen's back, with MaxAdFan85 saying, "I feel like most of the dislike for Kristen's stories is rooted in misogyny." The second worst storyteller was less clear, with both Eric and Tucker getting a fair share of votes, with Strolling in the Static saying Tucker had the most meh tales in my opinion. Fair enough, though I think Eric was slightly more disliked, with Jessica Tim saying, can we agree that the answer for worst is always Eric just for his personality alone? Yes. Yes, we can. Okay, let's end this thing on the positive. According to you, the Midnight Society members, the top 2 storytellers of seasons 1 through 5 are, starting in second place, it's actually a tie. Second place is a tie between Gary and Frank, which is kind of weird since they're the only 2 members who have ever teamed up on a story. MD Joker Queen said, I would say Gary. Super Specs is what gets it for me. Mad Chow said, my personal pick is Frank because Dr. Vink is a lot spookier than Sardo. Oh sure, if spooky is what matters to you over humor on a kid's horror anthology.
Listen. What other little adventures do you think we might be able to cook up together?
The number 1 spot wasn't even close. Fortunately, we were all on the same page for this one. That's right, the people's storyteller is Betty Ann, with Red Zaku saying Betty Ann dominated, Rainbow High Snobiety saying hands down Betty Ann, and Turquoise Star 17 saying the irony is that some of the most messed up stories came from the Midnight Society member who gave off the most innocent vibe. I mean, yeah. Sometimes those that seem the nicest are the most disturbed. I mean, not me. I'm just nice. You know, I don't have a murder basement. Yet. Thank you all for participating in the polls for this video. There were so many votes and debates across all the polls on Reddit, YouTube, Patreon, and Facebook. If you feel like your favorite storyteller got shafted, let's discuss it in the comments. Be sure to check out the next episode on the best and worst episodes of Season 3. Until then, are you afraid of the dark?
The end.
Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a like and a share. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon to be notified when more of these videos go up. It really is over this time, so get out of here.